Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. My name is Corey Olsen, the Tolkien Professor, joined as always by Maggie Parke. And
Hello.
here we are. This is going to be our final Other Minds and Hands for a couple months because tomorrow we enter into intensive Rings and Realms prep and filming. We're going to be involved in a bunch of stuff starting this week. So very excited.
Begins.
Yeah.
So it begins.
So it begins. And Mondays are going to end up being, we're not going to be able to commit to doing this every Monday because there's going to be other stuff that we're going to be doing. The Rings and Realms season is going to be fairly intense. So you guys will be hearing from us a good deal during the next few weeks, just not in this exact context. There's a chance that something might come up but in general, we're not going to be planning to do it until the end of October.
We'd give like a tiny window that if something came up and we wanted to talk about it and couldn't fit into Rings and Realms, we might do a pickup show. You know, you might hear last minute that we're going to do a quick pickup show. But yeah, I think hiatus is necessary for the next few weeks.
Yeah. And so it'll probably go through. So you'll remember when we've talked about our Kickstarter and stuff, the plan is the week. So there's the week the finale drops, and then we'll do the episode on the season finale of season 2. And then the weekend after that, we're going to be filming our big retrospective episode where we're looking back over. And that's the one where we're having special guests for that. We're having Matt from Nerd of the Rings fly out to the studio to join us. We're having Alan Sisto from the Prancing Pony fly out from LA to join us for that too. So they're all going to be physically present with us in the studio. We're going to have other special guests, we hope, come into the retrospective as well. So that's going to be a really big weekend. So it won't be until after that. And I think we'll be traveling immediately after that. So it may not be until the last Monday of October that we'll finally be back for resuming Other Minds and Hands normally. But that is the plan. And this, of course, reminds me to say that we have officially met our funding goal. Our Kickstarter is fully funded. You guys are awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is phenomenal. We are so delighted. I am so happy. One of the things that I have discovered in the years since I switched from being a professor to being an administrator, which I can now confess in public without shame. It used to be hard for me, Maggie, to say that I was an administrator.
You were an administrator.
Yeah,
I understand.
I felt like I was in an AA meeting or something,
Well, I feel like it also has this persona attached to it that affects ego, and we've never quite been those people, and neither is Signum. So you need to plow ahead in redefining how cool administrators can be.
That's right. At Signum, we're redefining what it is to be a university. We should redefine what it is to be a university administrator too.
And I don't know anybody that works at a university that doesn't do administration work either. You just have to own up to it and be it's a great part of this job.
Making stuff happen at the university is also fun. Anyway, one of the things that's...
My name's Corey, and I'm a bureaucrat.
I haven't made that confession yet. Mostly, Phil, because I'm a horrible bureaucrat. Talk about jobs that I am not good at. Maggie, I see you taking advantage of being in America right there with your beverage of choice here today.
Guys, I can't get root beer at home. This is so exciting. Yes. Little things, people. Purple Gatorade and root beer. That's all I've been having.
Exactly. Anyway, So, but what I was saying was, one of the things, since I have been working as an administrator, one of the things that I've discovered that I love doing is paying people. I love hiring people and paying them. That is incredibly rewarding. And so being able to hire crew to be able to join us in Rings and Realms, it's awesome. It is it's going to make such a big difference with what we're able to do in Rings and Realms. So that is going to be phenomenal. Being able to fly in our guests, it's just, there are things that we have been planning for a long time that we're really excited about doing.
And it's the kind of thing, we've said it before, everybody that's involved in Rings and Realms did it for free, does it for the joy and the love and the passion and the obsession. But isn't it nice when you don't have to do something for free? These guys are so used to being asked to do favors for their friends for free or whatever, but to be able to say, we know you want to do this and we're going to pay you, it just makes such a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To be able to go to the people who would do it for free and say, but we are delighted to be able to give you money for it. And, instead, oh man.
gonna be
It's
amazing.
the best. It's so cool.
And we're actually plowing ahead. We're heading towards our stretch goals. So
Exactly. Yeah.
to
So
tell you a little bit about that.
yeah, we announced so our original goal, of course, was $20,000. That was for the basic budget to be able to pay crew and to be able to pay for travel and stuff like that. The stretch goal, we announced a stretch goal of an additional $10,000, so we can get up to $30,000. If we can do that, then there are a couple different things that we're going to be able to use that money for. The first thing we're going to use it for is we're going to not only get to pay people, we're going to get to feed people as well, because we are going to be spending 12-hour days in the studio every week. Probably more than one. Certainly this coming week, we're going to be spending, as we try to do 3 episodes in 1 week, we're going to be spending long hours there. Being able to pay for people's food is going to be phenomenal. So that's a really great thing. And in addition, we're going to be able to establish some budget for wardrobe and props. Another like thing we used to fantasize about. We'd be like, "Oh, hey, could we do this?" And we're like, "Yeah, but we don't have any. Like, we need to source that, and we don't. Most of all the props that you saw in Rings and Realms last time were just like people's personal stuff. Yeah, like that leather book I used to have that I would write in sometimes at the table. That was just like Ben had that. Like it was just like a leather writing book that he had. Anyway, so there's all kinds of stuff.
And the props will be thoughtful props too, which I feel like is a big. It's not like, oh, we want to make the table look prettier. It's like, no, we're gonna get stuff we can talk about. Like bring in some things that we can actually do some analysis on as well, and see if there's folks that we can also, bring in to talk about some of those things if it's appropriate. So trying to think not just to improve the production, but to improve the analysis and value.
Right. Sorry, I just realized I had 2 of me showing.
2 Corys.
But fortunately, they were more or less superimposed on each other, so that was not quite as weird as it could have been. Sorry.
Who doesn't want 2 Corys?
Sorry. This is
so stretch goals.
Stretch goals. But the other thing that we're going to be using, if we make the $10,000 stretch goal, the other thing we're going to be able to do is to do a set of appendices. We're going to shoot a bunch of behind the scenes footage, and we would love to build kind of like the Lord of the Rings films, right? To make a set of behind the scenes, which would cover both like the kind of analysis progression, so I'm probably going to be doing a bunch of like talking to the camera as I'm thinking through my my own analysis and to have cameras on some of our early discussions, as well as like real behind the scenes stuff, looking at how the digital environments are created, how the video wall works, and how all that stuff comes to, how we're programming the camera robot and how all that stuff comes together. So I think it's going to be pretty cool stuff. And so being able to pay somebody to be able to do all the editing work that's going to be required to build that set of video, that stuff, all that footage that we're going to do into a real, a clear set of awesome behind the scenes appendices is going to be pretty cool. So
that part is also a really big deal, I think, is for us as a studio going forward. So like building these appendices, obviously we want to give everybody more content. Obviously we have a lot more that we want to discuss, and going behind the scenes is just very much our thing, right? Like, opening the collaboratory, getting your engagement to participate in the development of this stuff. So being able to like bring our process to you as a documentary just makes sense of like, watch how the sausage gets made, and you'll also get to see this like incredible equipment that not every studio has, but we're going to talk about the equipment through Lord of the Rings, which is great.
Right.
But that's like part 1 for me. And then part 2 is like, but this is also going to progress as a studio. So if you want to see Signum make more stuff besides Rings of Power, this is a great way for us to kind of exercise that and develop ourselves as a studio and develop a reel and show, our ability to do different things, because we want to make more stuff too. So the more content we can make with Studio Lab that's kind of this caliber, the better.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that is, it's going to be fun. So that's what we're going to produce. if we reach our $10,000 stretch goal. So that's our first goal. We're also thinking about stretch goals beyond that, because here's the thing. So officially our campaign ends the day after tomorrow, right? That's when the official ending time goes. But as some of you are probably aware, Kickstarter has been making changes to how they proceed. And the biggest change that I know of, and this is relatively new, even people who are familiar with Kickstarter have been surprised by this when I've been telling them this or when they've discovered it. Basically, we're able to keep pledges open even after the campaign officially ends. So the deadline for the campaign is now like the deadline by which you have to meet your goal or else the thing gets shut down, right? But if you do reach your goal, it can essentially stay open. So you can continue to accept pledges almost indefinitely, basically. We're certainly planning to continue to take pledges, to leave pledges open, so if people want to support it, they can throughout the run of the season, of season 2, essentially, all the way up through the retrospective, essentially. So there will be continued opportunity for people to. So I know it seems a little bit weird to be like, and if we meet that, then the next stretch goal when we have like 2 days left in the campaign. Some of you might be like, how much you plan to make in the next 2 days, right? But so that'll be open over the course, which means as we continue to build, we'll have the opportunity to do more stuff. So we've been there are a couple different directions that we could go with further stuff. Like if we are able to make, if we're able to get more than the $30,000, that is the original 20 plus the extra stretch goal of 10. If we're able to make beyond that, there are a couple different ways that we can create more content. Basically, it means we're going to be able to keep going. And there are a couple different ways we could go with that. We could be doing more like between seasons. There's a whole bunch of between season stuff that we had planned to do that we could continue to do. Another possibility would be to take some of the stretch money that we get from that in order to continue Rings and Realms to cover the War of the Rohirrim when it comes out, which is something that we've also been thinking about doing, about, using the Rings and Realms framework to discuss all of the Tolkien adaptations that are coming and not just the Rings of Power. Anyway, so that's these are things that we're thinking about. So we're kind of interested in input on what you guys would most want to see if we are able to fund more after the season is over. So the season, what we're planning to do is an episode of Rings and Realms per Rings of Power episode, plus the retrospective episode, which might possibly end up being a double episode, or triple, depending on how much footage we end up getting. Yeah. It's because we're going to be spending a whole day with lots.
I think
of
it depends how many people we're bringing in. So at the rate of the people we have coming and the caliber they are, we're going to want.
There's going to be a bunch of stuff. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so that's the base plan, right? And then we'll do the appendices definitely after that if we reach that first stretch goal. But if we go past that, again, where would people be interested in seeing us go? So would love to get some input on that from folks, what you would be interested to do. But in the meantime, today. And by the way,
I feel like we should do one more point there. And if you come in at a certain level, you get to actually join our development team.
Yes.
We have a Discord now that has those folks joining us and weighing in on ideas and thoughts, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're going to be kind of building a Rings and Realms core community there from based on the Kickstarter backers, and so people at the the sort of the higher backers are going to be a big part of what we're able to do moving forward. So that'll be really fun. Absolutely. So we are, but since this is the last time we're going to be able to have Other Minds and Hands, we did want to cover the War of the Rohirrim trailer, because that was one of the, there's a lot of stuff to do. Like, for instance, the Rings of Power soundtrack has dropped. There's so many really good things on there. I have not even gotten to listen to the whole thing because I was super busy doing other stuff this weekend. But what I've listened to is so gorgeous. Bear is just really, really good.
So good.
And really looking forward to hoping we can discuss that more also, perhaps even in Rings and Realms. But let's...
possibly with Jordan Rennells.
Yes, exactly.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
So we're going to talk about War of the Rohirrim.
let's talk about War of the
to
Rohirrim, because
before
the
we're
trailer dropped, and
consumed
that's
by
really
Rings of Power.
exciting. And this is definitely, this is definitely something. Once Rings of Power is done, it's something that we definitely are looking forward to turning to later on this fall. So let's.
We did have a quick question just about when Rings and Realms episodes are going to drop. We're not 100% sure, but pretty sure it's going to be right before the new episode airs. Is that right?
That's the normal plan. Like, so the normal plan is that they'll be dropping late in the night, what I call late Wednesday night, right? What some people call early Thursday morning. But that will be the normal time. So like before dawn on Thursday is when the episodes will be dropping on a normal week. That is the Rings of Power episodes. So we would like to get out our episodes by like Wednesday of the week, Tuesday or Wednesday, basically, of that week, so that people get a chance to watch it. But we're looking at we're not trying to be the first ones to release. Our production process is a lot, so
plus we're getting 3 episodes at once.
Well,
so
the first week is mad.
The first week is going to be nuts,
and it is our plan.
Traveling,
it remains our plan to do one full episode for each of the first 3 episodes. We're not just going to do one big conglomerate episode. So we're going to do 3 separate episodes in that first week. And I'm going to Seattle. Yes, exactly. In the middle of the, for the weekend. So,
and I'm going to LA towards the end of it. So
right, exactly.
We're figuring it out, and it's going to be great.
It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
So we may release episode 1 of Rings and Realms earlier, because we'll be producing that earlier. We'll be producing that during this week, before I leave for Seattle, basically on Friday. So yes, and JJ, as you say, right, we're doing planned analysis, not just a spontaneous reaction. That's exactly the idea. Anyway, so
it's like you've heard us talk about this before,
exactly, JJ. Exactly. So anyway, so I think that we will be, we may be able to release episode 1 sooner than usual, like on Friday or Saturday, perhaps. But episodes 2 and 3 will be like Tuesday, Wednesday of next week is when we'll be releasing episodes 2 and 3. Crazy to say next week we'll be releasing episodes 2 and 3. Yeah.
That blows my mind. That's where we are. Like, we've been talking about it for so long, and all of a sudden it's like, we're going to see it this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We have an hour left for Rohirrim.
Exactly. So yeah, let's talk about the War of the Rohirrim trailer. Because this is the first time we've really been able to dig our, sink our teeth into what's going on here. We've had images, and we've talked about those a little bit. So let's look at, we have 2 trailers. Let's look at the American trailer that dropped, the domestic trailer, and then let's look at the Japanese trailer that dropped, which is really interesting. So let's watch through the American trailer, and then we'll talk about that generally, and then we'll compare.
All Middle-earth knows the tale of the War of the Ring. But 200 years before that...
Riders of the Mark! Brothers of Rohan!
There was an older tale.
Arise!
We come with an offer to strengthen Rohan.
Hedda, daughter of Hel, I, Wolf, seek your hand in marriage.
Our fathers speak as if I were not even in the room. I do not want to marry you.
You do not seek an alliance. You seek a throne. You will live to regret this, old man. He's dead. You will pay for this with your life.
The boy I knew would never wish for war.
The boy you knew is gone.
Fire!
There's so many of them. I pledged to fight for my king.
You know nothing of war.
I'm the fastest rider you have.
People need hope, Hera. Something to believe in.
My pride, my joy. You could rule the world.
You think I am afraid of you?
You should be.
What does a mortal want with rings?
All right. Okay.
Okay.
So general reaction.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was like, I feel like I just have to say I don't have the context you have, right? So coming at it from this blind background, not totally blind, let's be honest, but a more blind background. The tie to the Jackson trilogy is so, I don't know, not jarring, but it's so strong that I find it a little like too heavy.
This is the thing I was most interested to ask you about because I hated it. I hated it. Loathed the opening of this trailer.
I feel like I can hear the production room. I can see them around the table being like, we got to tie it.
We got to tie
let
it. Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And if they're not anime fans, they have to know that this is tied to the original. Like, they could have done that in the first shot where we see Shadowfax and the fade. Cool. That was pretty neat. We didn't need Shadowfax and the map and the titles and it's just simmer. It doesn't speak for itself very well.
That's exactly the problem. I personally think that this is a mistake for other reasons as well, right? I totally get the nostalgia thing. Like, I understand the usefulness of that from a marketing standpoint. But I think that this is... The reason I think this is a mistake is not just because of the cashing in on nostalgia, which I think is very tiresome. And it's hard. I mean, one of the things I want to acknowledge there is, like, my own personal nostalgia is not at other people's levels. Right. Sure. So, like, oh, look, it's the Lord of the Rings film does not raise, like, I don't get a dopamine hit just from seeing this shot on screen. And I know that they're relying on many people to do that. I get that.
But I feel like I'm the audience that should get a dopamine hit by seeing that. And I don't. I find it a bit cheating, you know, like if they had started with the animation and put Peter Jackson and the font of Lord of the Rings in the font that we're familiar with, that would have been enough.
Yeah. And, you know, like, my favorite move that they made here in this beginning sequence. Let me see if I can actually manage to, like, scroll successfully. My favorite thing was the map. I loved the map. Yeah. Like, so the map is when they start with it two-dimensional with the titles over, just like in the film, right? And then they shift it to animated 3-dimension and stuff. That's cool. Like,
but it looks, I mean, it looks like the map we're familiar with, but in an anime style.
Yes. Yeah, so it roots it back to the recalls the original film, but shows, like, hey, it's a whole new dimension to Lord of the Rings film storytelling. It's it's animated now. Like, so neat. Like, I loved that idea. But what I hated was the montage. I hated the montage of Lord of the Rings shots. And here's why I disliked it. It's not just because it was just like, it just seems like pure attempt to cash in on nostalgia and, like, you should like this new thing that we're doing because you like this other thing that we did. I mean, it's one thing when you start off a trailer with, like, from the director of Jurassic Park, right? Or something like that, or whatever it is, right? Okay, fine. Like, give us some context. Maybe you can try to make me more excited, like, in a brief gesture. But this went on way too long just to kind of establish that. But worse than that, it totally messes with expectations. This is an anime film.
Yes. It just erases the director.
Yes.
Or at least turns him down.
Yeah. I mean, okay, legendary director Kenji Kamiyama. Great. I mean, that's important. But we get that 23 seconds in.
Yeah. And you don't tell us why he's legendary. Like,
Right.
give us his credentials. What else?
Exactly.
Is, like, and wasn't he? I mean, I didn't check his pedigree, but he was like Blade Runner. He was, Ghost in the Shell. Wasn't that him?
Oh, I don't even know.
I mean, he's done some like really big name things. I'm pretty sure you guys let me know if I'm wrong. But he did one of the Disney Visions. Like,
oh right,
he can stand on his own 2 feet pretty darn well.
For sure.
Yeah.
But again, so here's the thing. Japanese anime is different, right? Like, people who don't watch anime, I really like the metaphor James Tauber, and we're talking about this in our Signum Slack, and the metaphor he used was grammar. He's like that, you have to know the grammar of anime in order to it's a different mode of storytelling, and there are different storytelling techniques that are used in Japanese animation that are not normal even in like American animation, much less American action, live action film. So if your goal,
which is why we were so excited to talk about it for adaptation. There's such different.
It's really interesting. It's like an entirely different kind of adaptation that you're trying to do, right? Anyway, like this is okay. So it's going to require a transition. Like, people are going to need to be oriented. People who don't already know anime, people who are not anime fans, presumably they are wanting people who are not just anime fans to watch this film, right? Which means there's going to be a hurdle for people to overcome because it's different. And I can tell you, even this was obvious, even in the segment, we watched like a 5-minute segment at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Even in that 5-minute segment, which was the part where she was getting chased by the Mumak on horseback, by the way, we saw that like at the end. That was the scene that I saw. And even in that scene, the grammar of anime, as James, to use James's metaphor, was very apparent. Like, the storytelling mode, that was one of my first reactions. I was like, that was very anime. It wasn't just animated. It was very Japanese anime in its storytelling procedure. And so like that's a big deal, and that's going to be an adjustment for people. And so when you start off with like, look, it's the live action Lord of the Rings film, you are completely like, you're absolutely doing a disfavor, a disservice to you're like unorienting people to what you need to orient them to. You're going to make it more jarring when they actually see the anime film. So I thought that was for that reason, a really, really bad choice. And I had a really hard time with that. So yes, in fact, like the first time I saw it, I was so like disgruntled by the open. I had a hard time concentrating on the rest of the story.
I was just really disappointed that like that's not what we should be focusing on. I mean, we just spent 10 minutes talking about this, so like fully agreed 100%. But like that's not what we should have been spending our time on as people who do analysis. Like, that's not what you're showing us. What you want to be showing us are characters and story and engaging us in your story. Yeah. And all you did was kind of make me go, oh. And for me, it was the focus on the Aragorn shot where he opens the door. I mean, we all love that shot. That shot is a huge deal. It's memed left, right, and center. And it was because of the popularity of that shot that when I saw it in this, I was like, oh, now you're just milking it. Like, they're just going for the shot that they know everybody loves.
Yes.
So that makes me feel like you don't have faith in the ability for this story to tell itself. Like, we don't need that shot. We need more of this story.
Because it is true that the Hornburg, the place where he's opening the doors in that famous shot, is very prominent in this story. Like, okay, yeah.
Sure.
But that is not the takeaway that people are going to take from that shot. Does everybody love that shot of Viggo Mortensen coming through those doors? Because they're like, the doors, they're so dreamy. No,
exactly.
Like, that's not the point.
That shot is not for the doors
it's
and
not
the
for
geography.
The doors. In fact, most people are going to forget where that is, quite possibly, right? Instead, the focus is all on Aragorn, right? as he comes in, and Aragorn is of course not in this story, nor is Gandalf, who leads off. You know, the first thing is Gandalf riding out of the stables, and again, what matters is those stables. There's going to be a scene that's going to happen in those very stables in this show. Like, anyway, it was really frustrating. But yes, Ms. Manrique, we are going to get to the Japanese trailer, but before we do that, so one context I think is really important now that we are seeing more of the story, and a lot of these things either we had been told or we were guessing from what we saw, but we can now see very clearly, and I think it's really important to remind people of this. I've heard some people say, you know, the Rings of Power is like they're making stuff up in their own, like they're like speaking into this void and making stuff up. You know, in the War of the Rohirrim, we're finally going to get back to the text and the story that Tolkien actually told. This is not true.
Yeah.
The complete story that Tolkien... This story does exist. The story of Helm Hammerhand that we're developing in this film absolutely does exist. It is 1.5 pages long. The entire story is 1.5 pages long. So what they're doing in this film is precisely what the Rings of Power is doing.
Exactly.
Taking a sketchy outline of a story and developing it into a whole feature film, right?
Yeah.
That is, this is the same exact kind of fill in the blanks adaptation where you start with the sketch of a story, and you fill it in the kind of three-dimensional detail that you can do in a film storytelling process. And this is, you can see people starting to have exactly the same kind of reactions. Who is this strong female protagonist, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of this story, right? Who is this Hera person? She's in there, right? Mm-hmm. She's in there, but she's in there exactly like many of the Rings of Power characters who are only mentioned and who are now being given this full story. Gregory, I agree. It's a great story in 1.5 pages. I've always loved it. As soon as I heard this film was coming out, I was like, what a brilliant choice. That's phenomenal. Like, by all means, let's tell stories from Third Age history. And that's a great one to choose. I loved everything about that.
And that's the most attractive stuff for adaptation, right? Like,
yeah.
The stuff that like brews the dreams of fan fiction is what you should be tapping into. If there's a little throwaway line that makes your brain explode with what? Like, tell me more. That's where the story should lie.
Absolutely.
So the fact that they tapped into that, awesome. But that's not what this shows me.
It's not exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, the challenges that Tolkien fans are going to have with the War of the Rohirrim, from a pure story adaptation standpoint, are going to be the same as they're having with like I'm not saying that like things they'll like or dislike are going to be identical between the two things, but again, from like theoretically speaking, right, for the framework of what they're doing, here is the exact same as what the Rings of Power is doing. They're doing the same exact kind of adaptation. And so therefore, the question of like, why are you changing the story? Why have you added all this stuff? They've added the character of Hera. Again, people like saying, oh, they didn't add her. Yes, they did. She's unnamed. Like, it is true that the question of Wolf marrying the daughter of Helm is that's the premise of the dispute that originally happens. The daughter is never named and never does a thing and is never mentioned again in the entire story after like being proposed about, right? Mm-hmm. In the beginning of the story. So yes, they've absolutely, in every way that matters, they've absolutely added that character and made her the central figure of this story. Cool. Great. I'm here for it. I am interested to see that's exactly what you have to do with stories like this. And it's a really interesting angle to take a really minor character, the most minor of characters, an unnamed person who's only there as a plot device, right, in the story, and to say, hey, let's tell the story, but let's tell the story focused through that character. I love it. I love it. Yeah. It's a really, really interesting adaptation choice to make. But fans have to deal with that, right? Fans have to cope with that, and realize that there are some major changes being made.
God, and it's such a great way creatively to be able to do it. Like, we're gonna take this character that hasn't existed in any way that you know, but set it in a world that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, what a great vehicle, but that can be jarring for people that only want absolute authenticity.
Right, exactly. They want it to be the same as the book or the same as the picture of the book in their head. But this actually leads me back to another problem, which is similar to the first problem. I didn't have this concern about the war. I've expressed this exact concern about The Hunt for Gollum when we talked about that before. Mm-hmm. My concern is, are they going to be able to get away from the Lord of the Rings films? Right.
Are they going to try to
get away from the Lord of the Rings films?
Like,
to what extent are the films that Warner Brothers is releasing going to be just like, we're going to redo, we're going to just hit the reset button and continue to try to churn out the same Lord of the Rings stuff that we did in the Lord of the Rings films?
I'll make a note. Like, I feel like we should talk about extending series as one of our one of our discussions after Rings of Power and everything.
Yes.
Because, you know, I've seen a lot of conversation now comparing this to Star Wars and how and Marvel, like, it's just riding coattails. It's just trying to, you know, make more money off of something that was good once. Oh, that's a real interesting conversation.
It is a really interesting good, and there are many examples of good ways and bad ways of doing that. No, I think I agree, because that is an interesting, as you say, it really is a subcategory of adaptation in a sense, right? The making of sequels. There is a sense in which a sequel is always, to some extent, an adaptation of the original film, right?
Absolutely.
So thinking more about that relationship.
Just started singing the Muppet, "We're making a sequel," in my head.
Right.
So we'll put a pin on the sequel conversation, but
so, as I was saying, everything I've heard about The Hunt for Gollum, which is not much, because not much has been released, right? But everything I heard about The Hunt for Gollum has made me concerned. Like, please, just show me that this is something other than we're going to put Andy Serkis in the Gollum costume again and do the same thing again, right? Like, that's all I want. I just want a reason to believe that that's what I'm going to see. That I'm going to get
all
something.
We've seen so far is that.
That's all that I've seen.
Yeah.
I was not worried, and I said this at the time when we talked about The Hunt for Gollum. I'm like, well, the War of the Rohirrim, that's different, right? And then this trailer came out, and now I'm worried again.
I know.
Because so not only do we have the whole intro thing, which we've talked about, but even once we get past that, let me see if I can. When we get here, right? So we're still early in the trailer. We're still just showing scenes of like what we're getting, and we get this line of the Rohirrim on a hilltop looking exactly like the line of Rohirrim ready to attack on the Battle of Pelennor Field. And just in case, and we have he's got a hammer instead of and like the army with the Mumak. The elephants are driving me crazy in this trailer. It's my other least favorite thing about this trailer. Yep. I dislike the Mumak kill very much. And the reason is they're making me nervous. They're making me nervous, like, oh, so now we can have the Rohirrim charging across the battlefield and fighting elephants again, like we did. And that was, again, this is where, when I was looking at this and I'm like, oh no, seriously? We're just doing like an anime version of this. Like, I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was going to be true of this story. I was disappointed in that.
And it took you out of the story far too many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, 1 you can get past, but we're on 4 or 5 now.
Yeah, and frankly, like, I don't like having Muma kill in this story at all. I've been saying that from the beginning. Like, why elephants? I don't understand the I've said from the beginning that I did not understand why they would put elephants in here. People have been justifying it and saying, well, at the same time the Corsairs did attack and they were like allied with the Dunlendings, so they could have brought elephants up. Yeah, they could have marched elephants up 500 miles from the sea. That's certainly true. That's not easy to do. But sure, they could have done it. No, there's no indication. But, you know, whatever, like, that's within the normal kind of decision making. I'm not saying my objections to the elephants are not like the objections that fans make when they say they can't do that in the Ring of Power because it's not in the books. Like, I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
what I'm saying is I don't see how it makes sense. But let me say, yeah, Hannibal did it. Odola, that's exactly the problem. This is a Hannibal situation? We're turning the war with the Dunlendings, the war with Wolf, into a Hannibal situation? What, is Wolf Hannibal? Or is there some other Corsair Hannibal who's involved in this? Because if so, that's a completely different historical environment, right? That is a radical change to the plot. And it's okay. They can do that, right? And I'm interested to see what they do. But this is part of my point. Like, that's why it's a big deal. Hannibal was kind of an event, wasn't he? Right? And this, in the big picture of the Third Age of Middle Earth, if we're making this into Hannibal, then good grief, that's a big change. But here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that makes me really uncomfortable. I've said before that there's a really touchy political element of this film that I've been talking about from the beginning. Right. In Tolkien's history, you can look at the Dunlendings are displaced people, right? The Gondorians have like a quasi-colonial claim to the land of Calanarthen, which seems to have indigenous peoples living in it, the Dunlendings, and those are displaced when Gondor from afar gifts the lands of Calanarthen to the Rohirrim, who come in and displace the Dunlendings, who then bear resentment for their displacement by the Rohirrim. So the war in this film, Wolf and his dad, who are the antagonists there at the beginning, they are connected with the Dunlendings, with the indigenous peoples, the indigenous displaced peoples. So how they handle the indigenous displaced peoples and their war with the Rohirrim, who are in the colonizer role in that conflict, this is a non-trivial thing to handle. And it has to be handled with care. There are a couple horrible ways that could be handled, right? It can be handled well, but it can be handled really poorly. And it's been one of the things that I've been most, I think of like the popcorn memes, if there's one thing I'm showing up with my popcorn to watch, it's how they handle that situation in this film, right? So here's where this, coming back to the elephants. Elephant cavalry, historically speaking. Elephant cavalry is the most unstoppable force on a medieval battlefield. I mean, like, if you've got a war between two peoples and one side has elephant cavalry and the other side does not, there is a clear underdog situation happening. I just absolutely love that sentence and add it to the list of what I want on a t-shirt. Elephant cavalry will defeat your medieval army any day. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like that. And that is one of the things that that's one of the things that so think about how this worked in the Return of the King, right? In the Return of the King, you had, think of this, the three movements of the Battle of Pelennor Field that they did, and I'm not even counting the intervention of the scrubbly bubbles right at the end, when the dead people came in and swept the field, right? But the three movements before that, you have first this almost invincible, enormous army that's besieging the city, and the city is in despair, right? That's stage one of the battle. Stage two of the battle, then the Rohirrim come in, right? And you've got the charge of the Rohirrim and their cavalry against dismounted orcs. So they have a huge advantage. They're still small compared to the entire army, right? It's not like they come in and now they're the overwhelming force. They're small, but they have the advantage of being cavalry and attacking from the rear, right? So the sudden deliverance, they are the force they are delivering the city, and hope swells as the Rohirrim come in and they have their amazing charge, and that scene is incredible in the films and done so well, right? And it's amazing. Then what happens? Movement 3. Then the orcs run away and the elephant cavalry comes in. And in that moment, now all of a sudden, the Rohirrim become the huge underdogs, right? And now you've got the like, oh man, they just accomplished so much with the charge on the orcs, and now they've got to fight off elephant cavalry. Holy cow. And they're getting stomped and horses getting thrown everywhere, right? They're the huge underdogs. But now they're like, now they're, we're taking down the elephants like the four-footed crawlers in Empire Strikes Back and everything else, right? So, yeah, exactly. As Higgy Baby says, the look on Theoden's face when he sees the Muma kill said everything. Exactly, yes. Right? So this is how this is relevant to the War of the Rohirrim. Now, apparently, if I'm understanding this properly, the Muma kill, which is now like this scene in the trailer makes it clear that what we have here is not just a stray Mumak who's wandered into Rohan or something, but we have an army with elephant cavalry, with Mumak cavalry, that is invading, and that the Rohirrim are facing on the battlefield, right? And that those people are apparently, I think, going to be allied with the Dunlendings. That is to say, the indigenous displaced people who are at war with the Rohirrim in this thing. Do you see what that does? That makes the indigenous peoples the ones with the advantage. That makes the colonizers the big scrappy underdogs we're supposed to be shooting for.
Right.
That is uncomfortable. That's really uncomfortable.
What you gonna do there?
Yeah. That's again, I'm not maybe they're gonna recover it. Maybe it's gonna come out really well. And I'm hoping for the best.
And that's what's so interesting. Like, how are you gonna handle that? But flagging it up now is really useful. Like, here's where we see the dynamics that could come to unfold. And what's really interesting with the adaptation conversation, like, how are you going to play that?
How are you going to play
it? Because if they just ignore it, then that's a whole other, world of pain that they might be in for.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, it's a problematic situation. However you play it, it's a problematic situation, right? If you show the Rohirrim to be the, like, militarily advanced society, while the Dunlendings have cruder weapons and no armor and are at a massive disadvantage against them, well, then you're in a complicated situation, because now it really looks like European colonizers versus indigenous peoples, right? Mm-hmm. Again, it isn't that, but it looks like that, right? And yet we cheer for the Rohirrim. Like, we're on the side of the colonizers because we love them from the Lord of the Rings films. And, like, now it's complicated, right? So that's hard. Bringing in elephant cavalry on the other side changes the dynamics, but weirdly. And this is particularly noticeable to me because there is no, you can justify the Mumak. Yes, you can cross your eyes and say, sure, there are reasons why there could be Mumak. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it is a very deliberate choice. They are going way out of their way to import elephants into this story. There is no reason to suspect that any elephant was anywhere near 500 miles of this story when it happens in the book. So again, they can do that. It's an adaptation, but it's a big step that they've taken. And now I'm afraid, after watching the trailer, I'm now afraid that the primary thing that seems to be motivating it is to recreate the Battle of Pelennor Field, and we're just running the same script again, and that's horrible. Anyway, so I don't know how this is going to come out, but this I wanted to explain a little bit more about why the elephants are concerning to me, because they have. It's a choice with consequences. Remember, that's how we always talk about it, right? They can make adaptation choices, but we have to consider what are the consequences of the choices that they've made. What are the costs and benefits, right? What benefits do they give to the story, and what are the costs to the story of making some of these changes?
And are they even going to acknowledge it? I could just see where they brought it in because of the visuals of how good that fell in the Battle of Pelennor, and they're just going to use them because you need some force on the field, but never give the nuance of what that could mean. Yeah, they're just going to show it for impact and then continue on the story as they want. But that makes me worry because that's not what we're going to be necessarily seeing either.
Yeah. So we'll see. Well, let's watch the Japanese version.
Yeah, let's watch a little bit of that.
Let's watch the Japanese trailer. First thing, holy cow! It starts at Rivendell.
Rivendell,
right? That's mind blowing. Okay, but let's.
I'm like, are we talking about that, or are we going to do the trailer
No,
first?
I'm tempted to talk about it. Let's keep going. Here we go. Japanese trailer.
ピーター・ジャクソンが送るロード・オブ・ザ・リング200年前の物語が日本の神山健二監督に託された。舞台はローハン。若き王女ヘラ。この国に今最大の危機が迫る。敵はかつて共に育った幼なじみウルフ。
昔のあなたは戦いなど望まなかった。
放て！
お前の知っている俺はもういない。王座は俺がもらう。
この城が唯一の砦。
ロハンの兄弟たちよ、今こそ立ち上がれ。
僕たちのために犠牲になったんだ。
お前は王の娘。皆の希望だ。
この国の運命は
信じて、作戦がある。これが作戦？いい作戦だとは言ってない。
一人の王女に託された。
たとえ私が倒れてもこの国を導け。
運命の戦いが始まる。
国を一つにすることだってできたのに、なぜだ。
私がお前を恐れるとでも？
恐れるべきね。
ロード・オブ・ザ・リングローハンの戦い。
この指輪を一体何に。
I like the Japanese trailer way better.
I do too. And I think it makes her look way more interesting too.
Yes.
She was she was introduced as a marriage token, and they didn't stray too far from that conception. And sure, that's a big plot point, but this shows so much more of the world, the tensions, her journey.
Yeah.
I'm way more interested in this movie.
Notice how their focus is on the characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hera, right? Wolf,
Yes.
right? Helm, Hammerhand, right? Yes, they're setting up the story. They're setting up this story, and clearly pointing to like the trajectory of her character and what's going on. We even get a clearer sense of Helm's character. Let me see if I can. It's hard to scroll on YouTube, but we get a clearer sense of the progress of the war. Like, for instance, I loved the Long Winter. We didn't get anything about the Long Winter. So, Maggie, I don't know if you remember about the Long Winter. So it's basically the end. So when the Long Winter is like this horrible, like epically cold long winter that happens, and it affects like the Shire too and everything. But it strikes. So Helm is besieged in Helm's Deep, which is why it comes to be called Helm's Deep. So he takes refuge in the Hornburg, where the battle in the Lord of the Rings is, and Wolf and the Dunlendings and everybody are besieging him there, and then the Long Winter strikes. So like they're under siege so it's a long siege, and the Long Winter comes in, and Helm like goes out at night in the frigid cold winter and like kills people and stuff. Like it's super intense. But we actually got glimpses of the Long Winter. Yeah. And
that would be hugely impactful to their experience in their lives. So here we are showing.
Yeah, and I think we get hang on, I'm gonna mute it for now just because I want to. Yes, that sequence, that whole sequence right there of we get Helm sneaking out. So this is, and Helm becomes like, this is after his sons are killed, and Helm becomes like savage and almost bestial. And there are rumors like among the Dunlendings that he like eats the bodies of like he comes out and like kills people and eats their bodies. That probably he doesn't actually commit cannibalism, but like he becomes like a troll basically, and this like subhuman creature. So this shot of savage shirtless Helm out in the freezing cold, then with Hera looking out into the cold and weeping to see her father and what's become of her father, like that's awesome. Like I'm like, even like just as a Tolkien fan, I'm more excited to see their treatment of this. And I love this shot. I love this view of like, you know, Hera, her peeking through the wall. You can see that she's inside. She's safe from the cold, right? But she's looking out into the cold and weeping, and the wind is blowing. You know, the frigid wind is blowing her hair, and she's anyway. I you know, this sense of her compassion for her father losing it. I mean, when Helm spoiler, Helm dies, and then eventually, like, basically the bad guys win this whole sequence until, you know, the following spring after the long winter, when Helm's nephew, basically his sister son, comes in and retakes the kingdom and establishes the second line of kings in Rohan. So, but, you know, seeing Hera here as like the last remnant, and it really is like, yeah, well, actually, it's true. Like, her brothers and her father all die, and she's going to be the only one that's left. Yet another reason why the choice of her as a main character creates a really sensible through line for this whole story. But anyway, I think it's exactly, JJ. That's why the line of barrows on that side ends with Helm, and then there's the second line of barrows on the other side. Yeah, exactly. Starting with Freylof. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so much. As just one thing that really jumped out to me was that look, we're coming down the hill towards, like, besieging Helm's Deep in the snow. Saruman. We got no glimpse of Saruman's role. Now, historically, where we are, by the way, Saruman has not yet taken up residence, according to the book chronology. Saruman has not yet taken up residence in Isengard. It's right after this, basically, when Rohan is really weak, that he's like, hey, can I help y'all out? I'd be happy to, you know, live in Isengard and stuff, and that would be helpful, wouldn't it? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, and it'll be great. Thanks very much for that. So he makes his move right after this. And so the idea, especially building on the fact that we know that he, like in The Lord of the Rings, both book and film, he collaborates with the Dunlendings, right, to stir them up to attack the Rohirrim. So the idea that he is involved behind the scenes in helping to manipulate this situation, which he's then later on going to capitalize on. Sure, I can absolutely see a Saruman angle in this plot line.
And that one, you know, because we know so much from the Peter Jackson trilogy, thinking of the domestic trailer, I wonder if there'll be some more clear tie-ins of that role into that. But while you were talking, I was just looking at this shot too, and I'm like, this is going to be so much fun to do analysis on as well, because animation.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to look at of what's going on here and how they're framed, and just somebody mentioned earlier the editing of the international trailer, and yeah, I think the editing of that one shows us so much more of just how quick the cuts are and how they're shot and how they zoom in. That tells us about the characters. That tells us about pace and story. So, like, just how this one is physically constructed, I think, is going to be really interesting to play with.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think this is right. So, Gregory, this is after, well, the question of when Saruman becomes evil, right? When he really turns the corner, is an open question. Like, Gandalf doesn't even know for sure exactly how far Saruman had gone down these roads at what point. But the implication is that he was already beginning to scheme towards increasing his own power when he moved into Isengard. So he's certainly not, nobody at this point, there's nobody who suspects that he's going bad. And yet there's an implication that he, yes, Eric, in the essays on the Astari and some of that earlier stuff, you can see that Tolkien was thinking that even his original volunteering to come to Middle-earth, to become one of the wizards, that there were some corrupting evidences, like that his motivations were not awesome from the very beginning in Unfinished Tales. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Exactly. Anyhow, so it's, you know, they could play this in a couple different ways. They could play a Saruman who is still torn, who is not, like they could make him totally scheming, like he's committed to the power grab, he's made the move, he's evil already, but nobody suspects.
Or the other side of it, you know, it'd be interesting to see Saruman before that, and
they could
maybe we actually see the physical shift during this one.
Yeah, you could they, if they wanted to, they could make this play a role in why Saruman, like how Saruman turns, like how that comes about. Conceivably. But yes, it's true, Adola, again, any of it would be justified. Showing Saruman totally good with totally good intentions. You could absolutely do that story if you wanted to. You could absolutely do the story where he's already totally evil and he's manipulating everybody. You could do the story where he's still in transition there, still wanting to do the right thing but being tempted to do the wrong thing. And you could make this story instrumental into what continues to push him down the wrong way. That's the fun thing about these. Yeah. That's why it's so much more fun to think about the choices that are open, choices as being open to adapters, rather than continuing to say things like, they can't do that, that's not in the book. The books themselves are not even that clear on this stuff, right? So it's, there's lots of reasons to think one way and there's lots of reasons to think another way. So, and they can change any of the things they want to change anyway. Any of those stories could be really interesting stories. So which one are they going to choose, and how well is it going to work? How well is it going to fit in with the other stories that they tell? That is going to be really interesting. Eric, I agree. The Rohan artwork is still awesome.
Oh, it's still amazing.
It's gorgeous.
And I love the comparison. Like that part I don't particularly mind of the Jackson to the War of Rohirrim work. Just the detail of the Jackson one was so beautiful. Yeah. And I feel like this animation just kind of heightens it. That I really enjoyed that. Look at the shield work, the carving was beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, I don't know, kind of annoys me afresh in a sense about the kind of duplications that they're doing. So I just realized I'm looking through the Japanese trailer looking for a scene in the English trailer. But like they have an opportunity, right, to tell totally fresh stories in totally fresh ways, but also to establish a common element. Like this shot here of the tower. This is the Hornburg, right? And, this is the tower at the Hornburg, and we see this is straight out of the films, right? They're using the exact same design, costume design, set design and stuff, right? They're building on all that stuff so that everybody who does love the films will feel at home here. Everyone, and even people who, like I at the time was resistant to the films, but even people like me who were at the time resistant to the films, were still saying, oh man, it's so beautiful. Like they do such an amazing job of this. Yeah. I mean, if there was one thing that everybody could agree on in 2003, it was that Alan Lee and John Howe were amazing and did incredible work in this film, right? In all of those films. So yes, like you've got all this stuff that you can draw on, and that will all, in a subtle way, unlike the unsubtle way of the English trailer, in a subtle way, it will make everybody feel at home. It will give people that dopamine hit. They're going back to the world, not just to the theoretical world of Middle-earth, but to the actual, like the visual world of the films, right? So
and there's so much goodwill from their concept art, from being part of the Tolkien world for so long. There's so much goodwill attached to their effort and their creativity, and how carefully Peter Jackson used what he used of theirs. Yes. But there's only so far that can stretch too. So you just have to be careful, what you stretch that to. And this, I think, is great because it does welcome you. This doesn't jar us looking at this. We're in the place that we recognize, and it has the blessing of Tolkien because he's been part of the world for so long. I think that's part of the reason why the domestic trailer was so jarring, that there wasn't enough of that I feel at home. Instead, it was...
I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Yes.
It felt like a fan cut trailer. I was like, is this the right thing?
Right. Yeah. Right. I was just sorry. Eric was saying... no, wait, somebody was saying who is... talking about Meduseld. Oh yeah, Eric was saying the shot of Aedoras was near identical, but somehow more brilliant in animation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like shots like this. Yeah,
Yeah.
great, beautiful. I even loved the moment. There was one of the moments I think in the English trailer where you could see, remember the stairs that go down and then take a right hand turn. The stairs that Gandalf throws Wormtongue down. Right.
Yep.
There was a shot where like you could see you were on those stairs. Again, things like that, like, they don't need more than that, right? Like it's gonna feel like home to people, and that's great. But, so yeah, show shots like this. Show the anime version of Meduseld, and it looks amazing, just like the one in the film looked amazing, right? Same with the throne room, right, where you can see all the things where it's the same as the original throne and stuff. You can do all that stuff, and none of that is cheap. None of that calls anything into question. But then you can tell your own story, right? You can do your own thing, and I hope that they will. I certainly am more interested in the story that the Japanese version was showing. So yeah, we'll see. But I think it's going to be, so I have kind of new concerns, basically. I am really, really hoping that this is just for marketing, that the film itself is not going to be, is going to resist being more purely derivative of the Lord of the Rings films than this trailer seems to make it out to be. I'm going to hope that's just a marketing decision, and I'm going to go to the film and I'm going to be excited to see what they actually do with it. But I'm a little concerned. And as I say, it's one of the two reasons why the Mumakil make me concerned, because the only two consequences I can see of including Mumakil in the story, at least from what I've seen, are A, to try to just recreate this scene from the Lord of the Rings films, which is not what I want at all. And secondly, like, there are elephants in this because they were elephants in the movies, and so therefore there has to be elephants. Like, I hate that. And then secondly, the whole colonizer underdog thing, to make us more comfortable with cheering for the colonizers. We'll see.
Yeah, and I particularly hate it with animation because, like, you have the time to prep this story. Like, there's so much work that goes into developing animation, and anime can be a little bit faster than Pixar, sure, maybe, but you have all this time to work on story that nothing should be a throwaway.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have an elephant just because you want an elephant in there. Like, that would take weeks to make that shot happen with like tiny bits of animation to make that single elephant walk from A to B. So why are we devoting so much to that? Like, there has to be a really big thought process.
That was one of the things that the producers talked about at the panel at Comic-Con. About the difference in the editing process. He was like, in an animated film, you can't just be like, oh yeah, let's change that 15-minute sequence. It's like, no. A team of people quietly worked for months creating that sequence. We're not just chucking it. Yeah.
You do the editing before you do the animation. Yes. Almost, it's got to go in that direction.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so it is a different process, and that it just, but yeah, again, but it's not just a few elves. There are elves everywhere. I mean, like, the Mumakil are throughout both of these trailers. And okay, I mean, I'm ready to see what the story gains from putting the Mumakil, the elephants, centrally in this story. But I gotta say, I was never reading the Helm Hammerhand story thinking what this story needs is elephants, right? And then it will be perfect. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I'm still excited about it. Like,
me too.
I'm super skeptical, not skeptical, but like, you know, we've got some concerns, and this makes me a little bit more concerned. But
Yeah.
taking a story we're familiar with and putting it into anime, first of all, is just a really beautiful, bold choice, and I love it when people are willing to take a risk like that, and to bring on this really cool director and to tell this story of a really strong lead, like in a world that we should be able to be familiar with. Like,
Right.
there's a lot going for it that I'm pretty excited about it.
Right.
But yeah, there's a few decisions in its marketing at the very least that I'm like, guys.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't. I do have to admit, I have more like yellow flags in my head after the trailer than before, which is the thing. That's what makes me disappointed about the trailer. Like I was sad to find that my enthusiasm for the film decreased a little bit. Like, or rather, I'm a little bit more wary, not because of like the thing that they're doing or the, you know, the kinds of adaptation choices that they're making, just some of the evidence of some of the actual choices that they're actually making. But trailer could still just be the trailer, right? So who really knows from that? Oh man, yeah. And I haven't even talked about the whole Watcher in the Water thing with the elephant getting eaten up by the Watcher in the Water thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know. I think I've been trying not to think about that. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to examine why I've been trying not to think about that.
Okay.
Again, the problem is not there is no textual reason to believe that a Watcher in the Water could possibly be anywhere near Rohan. I mean, no, there's not. But does it say there isn't? You know, come on. Like, it's, you know, I'm not going to say, again, this is back to what I've always said with the Rings of Power, right? You can't say they can't do that because it's not in the book. No, this is a fill-in-the-blanks adaptation. That's the whole point. The question is what...
me of the, like, there's a Balrog? Like,
right.
There's a certain element, or like, I really like Eric's comment. It feels like a kid taking all of his coolest unrelated toys and making them fight.
Yes, it's kind of like that. Yeah. Well, that's exactly the thing, right? The point is not, oh, they can't do that. The point is, why are they doing that?
Yeah, why are they doing that?
And
exactly.
I'm coming up empty with good reasons to do it. Like, is this going to be a monster story? Is there a reason we need a creature in the lake? What does that add? Maybe it does. I mean, is it going to be relevant to the story? Is it just going to be like, oh yeah, everybody in the Westfold knows there's this like haunted lake here that has this big old sea monster, and it's a totally other story. Like, by the way, that sea monster is going to get killed by somebody at some point, and so that's why it's not around in the Lord of the Rings. And maybe that's a story we'll tell some other time. But like, whatever. Like, okay, like I'm ready. I'm totally ready to buy any of that stuff. The question is, why on earth are you including it in the story, right? Like, if it's going to be something that comes out of, I mean, if this is the like. Eric, what's Latin for lake? It would be like not Deus Ex Machina. It would be like the god out of the lake, right, to save her from the Muma kill. I mean, like, if that's what we're getting, if like the only role of that thing in this story is that it conveniently saves her from an elephant, again, I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying, like, I can't think of a good reason to do it. I can't think of a positive lacus. There we go. Deus ex lacus. That's what I'm worried about. Or it would be lacum. X takes the accusative, right? Anyway, yeah. So I don't really want to do. I mean, it's one thing when Nubeta does his like, who would win. Film, TikToks, right? Like, that's a fun exercise. That's a fun game. That's like taking two of your toys and matching them up against each other. But it's ablative. Okay, there we go. Yeah, Deus ex Lacu. There we go. Okay. Yeah, whatever. So I'm ready. Like, but how I approach that is I sit there and say, please make me feel like this works in the story. Like, give me a good story reason why this has to happen, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But it's a risk. it's a risk because it's a really out there element of the story to drag in.
And they're showing it to us now, so it gives all this time for speculation. Like, it makes it riskier if we don't have a ready explanation to hand. If like, trailers, I feel like sometimes should be small leaks of things that you're gonna be uncomfortable about, but we're going to reassure you about, so you've got time between trailer and film to digest it, understand it, take a minute. So when you see the film, it doesn't jar. Whereas this is just giving us, hey, you might be worried about this, with no consolation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it is really hard. And I agree, Larry, like, whether we're concerned about it from like a Tolkien lore perspective, whether we're concerned about it from the integrity of their story perspective, or from that kind of a world building perspective, how on earth does a monster like that get into a random lake in Rohan, right? Like, yes, I agree. Like, these are all questions that kind of need an answer, right? Yeah. And maybe they're going to provide answers, but to which I'm like, seriously? You're going to divert your whole story for long enough to provide answers to all of these random lake monster questions? Surely the random lake monster can't play that big of a role in the story that you've made, does it? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. But yeah. It's so we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
But yeah, it's
tip of the iceberg too.
Tip of the iceberg. And again, you can never draw big conclusions from trailers and stuff. Who knows? But as you say, they have chosen to show us some things, and I don't know. I often, as we've seen throughout the Rings of Power stuff, I often disagree with the choice. At least the choices that they make sometimes in trailers of what to include doesn't always land for me. Right.
Yes.
The Watcher in the Water, I would have stayed miles away from that in a trailer, because that's just like Tolkien fans watching this, like random Tolkien fans watching this, could be forgiven if their reaction to seeing the Watcher in the Water eating a Mumuk in Rohan is like, this is Looney Tunes, you know, like this is, because I mean, like, that would be, I could understand somebody having that reaction. Like, those three things are deeply weird to combine. A Mumuk from Harad, the Watcher in the Water from Under the Depths of Moria, and a lake in Rohan. Really? So who knows? Who knows? But yeah. Anyway, I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for the best, but it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to try to understand, to try to explain.
It's nice to have something. I mean, we're not going to, I imagine they're going to be fairly quiet now with Rings of Power, because they don't want to have like crazy amounts of competition with what's already out there with Lord of the Rings wise. So it makes sense to have something put out now and then have their moment in the sun after Rings of Power. Just
coming second half of October.
Time, you know, like
December 13th, I think, is the date I saw. Yeah.
And Rings of Power's over early October. So they've only got a few weeks to kind of build up to that. So it makes sense to plan something now.
Yeah.
This was just a risky thing to plan.
Yeah.
It should have been very reassuring and intriguing. Like a really good teaser would have been great. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see where we go.
Well, it's, you know, there's a lot. We'll see. I'm still excited about this film, but I wish I didn't have more concerns now than I did before I watched it. I wanted to love the trailer and just be totally uninhibitedly excited, but I couldn't be. That's all right.
That's fine.
Real quick, Higgy Baby's asking a very sensible question. We can do a watch party for the Rings of Power. No, I think Prime Video's kind of killed that, basically, by dropping the videos at 3:00 in the morning. Like, the fun part of doing a watch party, like, it's fun to sit around a physical screen and have a watch party for a group of people together. It's fun to do like we did last time when we watched them at midnight when they dropped, and everyone is watching it for the first time, right? You know, kind of in sync with each other. We could do something similar, but even I'm not going to sit up at 3 a.m. and watch 3 hours of show.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not.
That would be a late night even for me.
We could like do a community agreement. We'll watch it together at X time, but it probably won't be the first time we'll have watched it.
No, because then like, at least half the people showing up will have seen it already.
We'll have already seen it, and like we're gonna have to watch it at a different time for Rings and Realms in order to get production started. So like, I don't think we can do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, with our production schedule this year, it's going to be hard anyway. So, and like I said, even if we could appoint a random time, be like, okay, Thursday at some point during the day or Thursday evening or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's do a watch party, and we can all watch it. But again, it's not going to be the same because most of us will have seen it already.
Maybe we try that for the finale or something, because our schedule's a little bit more normal towards the end. So maybe we try that for,
And for the finale episode will be dropping at 9 a.m. for me in Germany, which is where I will be located. So I could absolutely do a live watch party for the finale.
For the first time, it would have been quite convenient time-wise for me in the UK. My kid would have gone to daycare. I would have been wholly focused. Not so much right now.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
I'm not getting up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we'll see about the finale, but we can go from there.
We'll see about but the plan is not to do regular watch parties of the show. But again, it seems like Prime Video has kind of squashed it with their release schedule. We may release Rings and Realms episodes live, however, on YouTube. That would be a fun thing to do. So we may do, who knows, maybe we'll do a Rings and Realms watch party when that drops. Those could be a lot of fun. So yeah, who knows? But anyway, that's coming. Just so we have to go. For people who joined late, we did hit our Kickstarter goal. Many thanks to everybody who helped us out with that. And in fact, we're now more than 25% of the way to our stretch goal, which is an extra 10,000. Which, if we hit our stretch goal of 30,000, then we'll be able to also produce a set of behind-the-scenes appendices to be able to bring you behind the scenes of Rings and Realms, which will be really fun. And we're already 27% of the way there when last I checked. And people will be able to continue pledging. The campaign officially ends the day after tomorrow, but pledges will be open. You can continue to pledge to support it even now. Since we've made our original goal, we'll be able to keep it open from Kickstarter. So people will be able to continue to pledge throughout the run of the season. All right.
And if you're just joining, this is also our last one until Rings of Power is over.
We're going to be on hiatus here from Other Minds and Hands until the end of October, basically. Maybe the very last Monday of October we'll be able to be back. All right.
On.
Very good. Thanks,
I'm going
everybody.
to the studio tomorrow to see Corey, and it begins.
And it begins. Begins tomorrow. Tomorrow, our first pre-production meeting, our official pre-production meeting for episode 1. Very good. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you guys here for this broadcast again at the end of October, but we'll be seeing a bunch of you for Rings and Realms stuff in the next 2 months. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Take care.